Hey guys, Wednesday Angelique, Gary here, and with my latest Booktube video, and this is going to be the books I talk. These are going to be the books that I talk about, and you might be able to notice this is a library haul. Now, wouldn't you think that if you were someone who was overloaded to the max with books, unread, in boxes, on shelves, in closets, piled up in corners, the way that I am, and probably a lot of you are, that you don't really need to go to the library, and I could probably stop buying books right now, and I would have books to read from now on. But I enjoy going to the library for different reasons, and I like just kind of looking and checking things out, and look at the old books, look at the new, see if there's something that I just want to try out. And I think a lot of times for me when I go to the library, it's about wanting to check a book out and see, do I want to buy this? It's a kind of a way to preview books. And so this is a library book haul, and plus I believe in, of course, supporting libraries, of course I think is very important. And I've got about 6 or 7 books here that I'll just go through quickly, and they're quite a mix of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, biography. I picked up one of my favorite writers of all time, Joyce Carol Oates' latest short story collection, which is called Beautiful Days. Wonderful painting on the cover. And also I'm thinking as I'm talking, I'm going to try to fix the graphics, to try to flip the video, because I know the graphics are backwards, and I used to be able to do this, and for some reason now I can't do it on my computer. So if anybody has any helpful hints about that, I would appreciate it. But I actually had a bad experience with Amazon. I ordered this book a few weeks ago. It took a long time to get to me for some reason. I kept tracking it, and it kept saying it was on its way, and I'm like, well, it was on its way last week. And then when I received it, I don't think this has ever happened before, the package and the book were quite damaged. It looked like it had been rattled through some kind of a machine. The cover was tore. The pages looked chewed up on the edges, so obviously something had happened. But Amazon's going to send me another copy. They're pretty good about working with things whenever something goes wrong. But I'm like, I don't want to wait on my Joyce Carol Oates. And so this is her latest story collection. Oates has been coming out with a story collection about one every year here lately, and I've read a few of them. It's a superb book, and I've actually been want to do a video on Oates sometime in the near future. I've been reading her for about 40 years. I think the first novel of hers that I ever read was Bellefleur, when it first came out in like about 1980, and I've been a fan ever since, and follow her on Twitter. And wonderful collection. By all means, check out Beautiful Days by Joyce Carol Oates, and hopefully I'll get my owner's copy soon. I don't know why I didn't show this in my last video where I was talking about author biographies, and for some reason I had this book, but I didn't speak about it. This is Virginia Spencer Carr's biography on Carson McCullers, another all-time favorite writer, and it's called The Lonely Hunter, which is kind of taken from Carson McCullers' first novel, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. McCullers, just a brilliant writer who had a very sad life in a lot of respects. She was quite ill from an early age on, and she drank a lot, she smoked a lot, She had strokes in her early 20s and basically, was handicapped the rest of her life and died when she was 50, quite ill. But wonderful writer, and this is a very comprehensive, very excellent book. And I love it when you have a writer that you really adore and you find a biography where the author has really done them justice. I mean, what I want in the books is I want detail. I want detail about their life and their work. And you have it here. Uh, it's in total. It's complete. It's not missing anything. I highly recommend that you read Virginia Spencer Carr's The Lonely Hunter. And also, speaking of biographies and McCullers, um, upon her death, McCullers left. I don't know if you'll be able to see this cover or not, but this is called Illuminations and Night Glare, the unfinished autobiography of Carson McCullers. And she was working on this at the time of her death in 1967. It's unfinished, and there's quite some good things in here. It has correspondence between her and her husband during World War II. It has some of the essays that she wrote and some other pieces. Her talking about, art and writing, and it's quite a good book. It's sad that it wasn't finished, but what we have here is pretty good. And I've read reviews of this before, and some people go so far as to say this should not have ever been published, and I don't really agree with that at all. I think that what is here is quite good. It took a long time, decades, for this book to actually come out, and I'm so glad that it did. I'm a big believer in whatever we have of great writers, whether it's letters, if it's a novel or something like that, and it's just fragments, that may be just for the serious biographer or the scholar to read, but this is well worth checking out. Also a fan of the novelist, story writer, essayist David Leavitt. I've been reading him for decades as well. I actually have never read this particular book. Oh, well, I have read this before too. I read it many years ago, and I was wanting to reread it again. And I have a copy of this somewhere, but I'm organizing and packing it, got things packed up in boxes, so I just went ahead and got this. And this is a wonderful novel that he wrote some years ago, The Page Turner. It's a short book. I don't know if I would call it a novella. It might be a little long for that, but a short novel, wonderful read. If you have not discovered David Leavitt, please seek his books out. His books, The Lost Language of Cranes, Family Dancing, his collection of novellas, Arkansas, is wonderful. And he's written, he wrote a biography of Alan Turing that I believe was the basis of the movie that was done a few years ago. Not quite sure about that, but David Leavitt, The Page Turner, do read this. Another one of my most favorite contemporary writers is the wonderful Michael Cunningham. You know him as the author of The Hours, Specimen Days, A Home at the End of the World. I'm also reading his novel, I forgot the name of it. Let's see, his novel, I think it was the last novel he wrote. It's A Snow Queen. I'm reading that right now. This is actually his most recent book that came out a couple of years ago. It's called A Wild Swan and Other Tales, and it's Michael Cunningham, and it is his take on classic fairy tales. And I haven't started reading this yet, but it looks excellent, and people have mentioned this to me many times, and so I saw it on the shelf, and I thought, well, I'll finally get this and read it, and I'm sure I'll be getting my own copy of this soon. But basically his retelling of classic fairy tales, which I think is a very interesting endeavor. This past week we lost the wonderful poet Lucie Brock-Broido. And I had heard of Brock-Broido before, but I had not ever read her. And everything I read of her work was high praise, and of her as a person. And she was a wonderful poet, and she passed away this past week. She was only 61 years old, which is quite sad. I don't know what she died of. I think her last collection was called Stay Illusion, which I've ordered and it's on the way. I'll be showing it soon. She also wrote the collections A Hunger, The Master Letters, and this one is called Trouble in Mind. I believe it was her third collection, next to last. And I've read many of her poems in the last few days, both online and in this book and in periodicals, and just a wonderful poet. Something, her voice varies, but there's something kind of baroque about her voice. Also something very humanist, humanist. Also, she has a sort of fable-like love of animals, the creatures of the world that she uses as metaphor and illusions in her book or her work are just fascinating. And anyway, very sad that we lost her this past week. I do encourage you to seek her out. Well, she's got a few videos on YouTube that are interesting where she's talking and doing readings. Seek those out. And I thought that I would finish up reading one of her poems. I do readings sometimes, and I just thought that I would, this would be a nice way to pay tribute to her and to end the video. So this is a short poem. It'll probably take me about a minute or so to read it, and should have brought my glasses, but I didn't. And it's called Girl at the Border of Her Own Allegory by the late Lucie Brock-Broido. A man takes off his armor past the Iron Age, and it stands without the man inside. She folds in the metal garments of his great blank wings of winter. In St. Petersburg, the night engraving, church bells toll, and in this constant code, I do not know if tolling signifies a death, or marrying, hollowed out of frost, or rue, or injury. The dark is big, filling the city with silver and trouble. You're a coder where you are. Love, curious as the alchemist who keeps his salamander living in a flask of fire, while the will of me, a black reptilian doctor's bag, clicks shut. My own fealty galls, bewilders me. Incocto to Leavitt's white horse, the beauty says, "Go where I am going," and he takes me there. That's actually not the poem that I meant to read, but I lost my marker, and so, I'll read her some more in the future. So, wonderful books, Let me know how you use the library. Do you use the audio-visual? Do you do research? Do you try things out the way I do and go buy them? If I love a book and I love an author, I have to own it. Even if I don't read it for, many months or even sometimes a couple of years, I have to own the book. But I do think that getting them first in the library and kind of checking them out is an excellent way of, seeing if you want to invest in them. So anyway, share your love of libraries and what you're reading in the comments below. Please subscribe. Please share the video, if you're in a book group. And I'll try to do another Booktube video in the next few days or week or so. And all of you guys take care. And thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate it.